Welcome, everybody, back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And what an amazing game of basketball we just saw between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Dallas Mavericks as Luka, Kyrie, and the boys finish this series off. Incredible game. Comes down to PJ Washington drawing a foul on a corner three, where he has made a living this series and knocking down a couple of clutch free throws. Logan, what do you take away from Dallas finishing this thing off?
Just a Herculean effort from Dallas to win this one, Carson. And it's everybody that deserves credit on this team, man. It's not just Luka Doncic. I do want to give him credit. I've been very critical of Luka Doncic in these playoffs. And I hope that he can continue playing at this level. You know, we were concerned about his health. And this is a really great back-to-back games that we've gotten from Luka. He's got the turnover 7 in this one, but I thought he executed almost flawlessly down the stretch. Like the 7th turnover comes in the third quarter or early in the fourth, and he doesn't make any more mistakes like the rest of the game. Masterful execution out of double teams. He's hitting all of his step back threes. He's hitting all of his jumpers. And I just like his process this game more, Carson. Like he's working to get downhill. It's just a much better Luka Doncic game. I also want to give a big shout out to Lu Dort for how he was able to defend Luka in this series. Carson, when Luka was guarded by Lu Dort primarily, he held him to 44% from the field and 28% from behind the arc. Just great stuff from one of the league's best perimeter defenders. But it's everybody on this roster that deserves credit, man. Kyrie Irving and what he did in the second half, his big shots. But the role players, man, Derek Lively plays maybe the most crucial part of this game and how he was able to dominate the glass. He holds Chet Holmgren to 3 total rebounds in this game, and it's not just Lively, too. It's great boxing out from guys like PJ Washington and Derek Jones Jr., too. He gives them 12 points, 15 boards on 5 of 6 shooting. Just crucial clutch rebounding in this one, a ton of offensive boards. And, Carson, I want to give a credit to both of these teams, too, for absurd rim protection in this series. Oklahoma City shot 60.7% in the restricted area. That's second worst in the playoff field. That's in this series. The only team that was worse was Dallas, who shot 55.7%. And they held Oklahoma City to 38.5% in the paint non-restricted area. That's by far the worst in the playoff field. That's everybody, man. Lively, Washington, Derek Jones Jr. And PJ plays the hero in this one, man. He only gives you 9 points, but it's 2 monstrous threes and the clutchest free throws in the game. Great defense on SGA, I thought, all game long, man. SGA misses a crucial fadeaway on him. PJ comes up with a huge block on Jalen Williams down the stretch. He's got a crucial offensive rebound off of a Lively missed free throw where he kicks it back out to Luka, relocates, hits the crucial corner 3, and makes the big free throws, man. It's also Derek Jones Jr. It's just all hands on deck. Like, Luka gives all those guys credit in the postgame, and it's true, dude. They couldn't have gotten this done without everybody pulling their weight, man. Derek Jones Jr. gives you 20 points with 4 3-pointers made. And I gave Lu Dort credit for what he did on Luka. I want to give credit to Derek Jones Jr. and what he was able to do on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander throughout this series. Carson, he holds him to 33% shooting from the field. Like, it's just a great team effort, man. It's all hands on deck. 17 points. They were trailing by a point in this game, man. I was almost ready to write Dallas off, and everybody pulls their weight. They all come up huge. Dallas' supporting cast was just better in this game and throughout this series, man, and they get them across the finish line. Just a huge credit to the supporting cast here in Dallas.
That's the story of the series, man. This was the first instance in this series in which we got a really good collective Kyrie and Luka game, which was awesome. And we have been waiting for that. Luka's knee has been an issue. Both these guys have consistently been seeing 2 defenders. So Kyrie hasn't always been the most assertive. He's been willing to defer, especially early in these games. And this is the one where it's still not like the peak that we could see from these guys, but Kyrie in that second half starts going more to isolation where they're not going to send a second defender his way, gives you 18 points, and is just one of the greatest pure shot makers that we've ever seen. That is on full display regardless of the matchup in this one, particularly from the mid-range. And then Luka played a really good basketball game. The turnovers were an issue early, and there's a couple offensive fouls that he picks up in this game. but the shot making was just spectacular from the jump. And that has been the single biggest thing that has failed him. He also had a few really nice patient drives getting to his floaters, and they both have their massive moments in this game, right? Kyrie hits that huge bailout leaning three at the end of a shot clock. Luka hits that massive step back over Lou Dort once they've already committed the comeback to actually put them ahead. Both those guys stepped up in a big way, but it is about the collective contributions of this supporting cast, and that is the story of this Mavs team, Logan. And I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. To think about where they were at when they made the Kyrie trade and where they are today, it is just a remarkable masterclass in team construction. They have consistently made excellent value add after excellent value add. All of these guys consistent with the needs of this basketball team, adding size in the front court, which was essential simply from where they were coming, because they had no competent centers before they drafted Derek Lively, and he was a rookie who you wouldn't want as your lone capable center. Of course, Gafford's been really good, but Lively is the hero tonight, adding great defensive-minded wings and adding dudes who in this series stepped up and made big shots, Logan. Before this series, we both picked Dallas, but we also felt that Oklahoma City would have the more reliable offensive supporting cast down the roster. They just had more proven shot makers. And in this series, it is consistently PJ Washington swinging games. And of course, he makes two big threes in the fourth quarter of this game. But to me, to have the mental presence to realize, all right, SGA is flying at me like a wild man here. This is going to be a terrible look if I force it. Let me pump fake, get to the foul. That was a phenomenal play from him at the most important moment. He averages 18 and 8 on 61% true shooting in this series. Absolutely massive. Like, they were so willing to help off of him, leave him in that corner, and he punished them time and time again. But in this game, offensively, it is Derrick Jones Jr., who, again, they were willing to help off of, and Luka just kept finding him. They have such fantastic chemistry overall, but he was nailing those corner threes. He hits the bailout turnaround over Chet down the stretch of this game, which is just a massive one-off possession. But beyond the shooting, what he's done attacking closeouts, what he's done as a roller, what he's done in transition, the dude was just excellent. And that's not even to mention the fact that obviously most of his value is coming defensively, but to give you 13 a night on 58% true shooting like he did in this series, when you factor in his point of attack defense and what he does as a helper with his length and his vertical athleticism, they signed him for the minimum, Logan. Like, that is a game-changing move that they made. He has been consistently one of their best players. Again, it's just such incredible roster building. But Lively, to me, is the hero of this game. He completely changed this game, especially in the fourth quarter. 8 points and 3 offensive rebounds in that period, and effectively had another offensive rebound because he drew a foul fighting for the ball. And yes, he's massive, right? But a lot of this was just nonstop effort. And you see that when he even draws, or he commits 2 fouls, I should say, fighting for rebounds, one offensively, one defensively. Like, nobody was pursuing the ball with more intensity than Derek Lively in this game. But also, we've seen both him and Gafford, especially early in this series, have some issues as a roller, as a decision maker, and as a finisher. He comes up with a couple of big finishes in this fourth quarter. Even earlier in this game, like, his hands weren't fantastic. They had a couple turnovers trying to get him the ball. But in that fourth quarter, has that huge and one finish going over the top of Chet, who has been arguably the best rim protector in this postseason. And what he did on the offensive glass, that level of impact from a rookie is rare. We're spoiled because in this series, we have Chet, who of course is a better rookie, and Chet had a really good offensive game in this one. But we knew coming into this that OKC having to hang in somewhat on the glass would be key to them surviving in this series, and that they were going to be operating at a significant disadvantage there. And that was perhaps at its most clear in the fourth quarter of the most pivotal game. And Derek Lively is the key factor there. He has 15 rebounds. Gafford adds another 7 for offensive. And as you mentioned, Chet only has 3. So it's the collective, dude. It is just a basketball team that is built beautifully with 2 star shot creators who can play at a top 15 level, both of whom did so tonight. And then with dogs all around them who make the high effort plays, who have obviously all the athletic traits that you want defensively, and who were all comfortable and confident enough in this series to make big shots when they needed to, because the ball was often forced out of their stars' hands. It's just an incredible series from Dallas, and a testament to what they've done over this last year and a half. They are a very, very deserving conference finalist.
1,000%. I mean, in a lot of ways, Carson, I think that this team fits together like a perfect puzzle, right? Like everybody just commits to doing their jobs. And that's the difference to me between, championship and not championship teams. And I'm not saying Dallas is going to go out here and win the chip, but they've got their two stars that are going to go out there and serve buckets. And they just have so many unselfish guys who are willing to just do their jobs and do what they need to do to get the job done, man. They got a lot of junkyard dogs, man. PJ and Derrick Jones, like, it's that commitment, those guys committing to a role and just doing their jobs that allows this team to play so great. I'd say, and I don't mean this in the talent level aspect, I think Dallas, Carson, has the best construction around their stars outside of Denver. Like the way this team just fits together, it's perfect. It is so complementary to their stars. And I want to give out one more number that you were specifically referencing. Carson, Oklahoma City gets out-rebounded by 9 boards in that final period. They come up with 7 total rebounds. The Mavs come up with 16. They get 6 offensive boards, 3 of them from Derek Lively. Oklahoma City grabs 0 offensive boards, and they get out-rebounded by 9 total on the night, 54-45. It really was the biggest difference. It was the key factor that we mentioned coming into this series, and it ends up being the biggest difference maker in the most crucial moment in the closeout game of this series. But it's beautiful, man. I think outside of Denver, I think that Dallas fits together better than any other team in basketball, and it's a testament to this front office and how they were able to throw everything together so quickly. Dude, we picked them to miss the playoffs at the start of this year. Like, we said that Dallas wasn't going to be here, and obviously the dynamics changed at midseason. You just never see this, man. And that was another skeptical part, right? You don't normally see teams that are just thrown together at the trade deadline do something like this. And this is now 2 consecutive years where LA makes some moves at the deadline last year and makes a Western Conference Finals appearance, and Dallas does this year. You just can't sing their praises enough, man. It's remarkable. And how poetic too, Carson. Oklahoma City trades the pick that ends up being Derek Lively to Dallas, and Derek Lively ends up being the hero in the closeout game, man. Dallas is a really deserving conference finalist, and I think they're going to go do battle with whoever we get out of that other series.
This was a really, really strong performance from them. And I thought that last round, they were less consistent. They had a couple of those abysmal starts. And obviously game 1 of this series was really rough. And there were still moments where Luka didn't have it going. And so the offense wasn't the prettiest, but the defensive foundation is just outstanding. And really the strength of this team when it comes down to it. Like, that has been the most consistent staple of their success. And then when Luka starts finding his shot like this and Kyrie steps up and is aggressive in the second half, this is why we both had them as our number 3 contender coming into the playoffs in the league, our number 2 contender out west. They've shown it all. On the flip side of this, the Thunder fall. It's a very, very close game. And I thought SGA did everything that you could have wanted from him. And to me, throughout this series, cemented his status as a top 5 guy. There was a huge deal of SGA skepticism. And it's really tough to say why. I just think there's a lot of narratives about him that were started that were objectively false. And a lot of people held the fact
they don't like his aura, Carson.
But people love his aura. I guess some people have to then be going against the grain and they have to dislike his aura. The foul baiting thing was always ridiculous because he's one of the best pure shot makers in basketball. And that's what he puts on display throughout this series. 32, 8, and 7 on 60% true shooting. Absolutely phenomenal. And put on a scoring masterclass, dude. Like, he just has a skill set that no defense will ever be able to deny. He is the number 1 restricted area scoring guard in the NBA. Impossible to stay in front of. The shiftiest dude in the league with the best body control in terms of balance in the paint since Michael Jordan. And in this series, you don't even really get to see that because the paint is so consistently loaded up. And then he shows you that he is the best short mid-range shooter off the bounce in the league, and he can still threaten those drives. The shin angles that this man can generate on these step backs, like the deception with his body, the ability to change gear, stop on a dime, it's just second to none in the league right now. And even beyond that, you see the mastery as a post scorer in this game. He's a 90th percentile post scorer this year. The step throughs are just absolutely lethal. He goes to those several times in this game. The turnarounds, he's got fakes out the ass. Like, you play too far off And it's not his tendency to shoot a bunch of pull-up threes, but he can rain them on you, and he shoots them pretty efficiently overall. In this one, he was phenomenal there, right? Makes 4 of 5, one at a huge moment in the final 35 seconds of this game. It was an absolutely dominant scoring performance from him in an absolutely dominant scoring series. And in the crucial stretches of this game, and by the way, the crucial stretches of this series, really, you think about what he did saving them in game 4 when that series should have been all but over. Like, he comes out in the second quarter when OKC's offense had been humming, but then they started to go cold. He was the dude who just kept making shots, kept getting to that mid-range, kept delivering. Then, late in the third, OKC went cold again. He scores 7 straight points on 3 possessions, breaks the slump, is able to rebuild some of the lead that they had built up that the Mavs had canceled out with that 13-0 run of theirs. Then in the fourth quarter, he creates 10 of their last 13 points, including the assist with that lob to Chet, goes 3 of 4 in the last 5 minutes. Like, he kept on doing his job. He kept on creating great shots for himself. And by the way, I thought he was really good as a playmaker in this game as well. He's not one of the league's elite there, but beating doubles, never forcing the issue. He has 0 turnovers in this game, along with 8 assists in a very efficient scoring performance. He's clearly a top 3 scorer in the league today. I think you could make a strong argument that he is the best scorer in the league. He's not my personal choice, but I think it's pretty clearly, when we look at how they scaled to the playoff stage, him, Luka, and Jokic in a top tier. And I want to give props to the Dallas defense, because you mentioned PJ Washington. Like, I thought in the second half, they, and especially him, did a much better job on SGA, and they particularly stopped biting on a lot of those fakes. And so some of those possessions stagnated, and yet he still gave them buckets down the home stretch of this game. The star of any team is always going to bear a disproportionate amount of the credit, and oftentimes even more so the blame. And so I'm sure there will be some people who somehow find a way to make this about SGA. This isn't about SGA, dude. He is the one dude on this team who is the fully realized version of himself, who is a bona fide top 5 player. Everybody else on this OKC team, when we're talking about the core guys, J-Dub, Chet, they all have immense potential, and these role players had really good regular seasons. None of them consistently lived up to their potential. SGA is the one dude who did, and he was the best player in the series. Luka matched his level over the last 2 games, but Luka was struggling early. It was the Dallas role players. SGA was the most consistently great player in the series, and I want to give him an immense amount of credit for that.
I completely agree with you. For me, he's the second best scorer in the league right now, only behind Jokic. I thought he outplayed Luka consistently in the series and was the best player on the floor. I can't say it enough. I mean, and I said, we went on Jason's show live last night too, talking about our top 5s. And I had, not last night, 2 nights ago, but we did our top 5s. And, you know, I had SGA over Luka for just the way they had been playing. Now, I would reconsider that full health, but SGA I just thought consistently did. And down the stretch, dude, not only bangs that step back 3 on PJ, he hits another pull-up midi. He's doubled twice, which leads to the alley-oop to Chet and a J-Dub 3. I want to hone in on what you were talking about with how deceptive he is. One of the things about SGA as a scorer, Carson, is how, you know, we always talk about the consistency. He sells every move like it's the same one. That's what makes him so hard to guard. It's like that initial step where he gets that step back on PJ. His step back looks the exact same as his crossover. That's why you can't defend it. You're in a mental prison if you're a defender. PJ's an awesome defender, and he just creates that bit enough of separation. SGA is consistently, I think he's been one of the top 3 players in the playoffs with Jokic. I think you could make a case for him over Ant too. He's been so great. Carson, in these playoffs, 5 straight 30-point games into tonight, and some historical numbers that I think add some really good context to what SGA did in this run. He averaged 15.4 pull-up points per game and shot 52% on pull-up jumpers. Among players with more than 1 series played since this data started being tracked in 2014, it's tied first for the most pull-up points per game in a playoff run, only with 2021 Donovan Mitchell. And then if we look among all players to average 10 or more pull-up points per game in a playoff run since this data started being tracked in 2014, there's no games played minimum for this requirement. You could play 1 game and get 10 pull-up points per game. Carson, it's the second most efficient high-volume pull-up playoff run ever, only behind 2022 Chris Paul, who shot 54.1% on pull-ups.
He was on one. He was
it is
on one that year.
He was. That's the thing with SGA, is this is a historical scoring run. It's a historical playoff run. It's a historical pull-up jump shooting playoff run. But it's like, I almost expect this from SGA. I don't know. We have these outlier pull-up jump shooting runs with the Devin Bookers and the Donovan Mitchells and, the Chris Pauls. These are all great pull-up jump shooters. But there's something with SGA that just makes me buy into him more. And again, in the toughest of circumstances, against a Dallas team that is packing these paints, a Dallas team that is packing every time he drives to the rim and nobody else can finish. Jalen Williams can't get a shot off in the lane. Lou Dort can't get a shot off in the lane. Aaron Wiggins can't. Isaiah Joe can't. And yet SGA is consistently delivering. It's remarkable, man. Nobody had an answer for him in this series. He shoots over 57% on PJ Washington, on Josh Green, and Luka Doncic. Kyrie holds him to 43%. Credit to him. And as I mentioned, Derrick Jones Jr. overall in this series holds him to 33% shooting. But there really was no answer. And I do think you have to be really disappointed in Oklahoma City supporting cast. You mentioned this earlier, Carson. SGA is the only guy to get a bucket for the Thunder for 6 minutes in the second quarter. Nobody else got a bucket, man. So I got to point the finger at J-Dub. J-Dub gives you 16 points on 48% true shooting. That's coming into this game. And I was disappointed with Chet. I know he has a better offensive game in this one. He has his moments. He shoots 25% on catch-and-shoot jumpers in this series. There's just a lot of points left out on the table on open jump shots. Oklahoma City overall, Carson, in this series shoots 32.8% on catch-and-shoot three-pointers. That's by far the worst of any team remaining in the semifinals. And in the regular season, this was a team that shot 40.2% on catch-and-shoot jumpers. That was the second best in the regular season, behind Boston. It's a core part of this offense, and it's just something that you can't have leave your team, especially when Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren aren't pulling their weight consistently. It just leaves them at the most opportune time. And I didn't think it was an issue of them generating high-quality shots. I just thought it was an issue of them leaving them. So I do put this as a major indictment on Oklahoma City supporting cast. The beauty of this, they're the youngest one seed ever. They're the youngest team to ever win a playoff series. They have a young superstar that I just believe in consistently. They're going to be back here. This team is going to get better. But you do feel just what could have been, man. This team could have very easily forced a game 7, and, who knows what could happen in a one-game environment. I'm really disappointed in the supporting cast and how they let Shai down in this one, man.
I don't really agree that they could have easily forced a game 7. Like, if we're doing the what-ifs.
Carson, they were up 17 in this game.
Okay, the point that I'm going to make is that there was an equally monumental choke by Dallas in game 4. Like, who was clearly the better team throughout this series? It was Dallas. To me, it's more like, all right, yeah, this could have been over in 5. It could have gone 7, so Dallas won in 6. This game, I thought we got definitely one of the better collective performances from OKC's entire offense. Like, I think that Dallas has done a really good job on OKC throughout this series, right? We have seen them do a phenomenal job of protecting the rim. We have seen them with these incredible rotations and just all of their athletes being in the right spot. And we've seen them kind of overwhelm the supporting cast. And I don't think that the shot quality in a lot of these threes has been super high throughout this series. The first half of this game was the one time when it felt like OKC was reaching their offensive ceiling. Their offense looked like what it did throughout most of the regular season. The ball was moving beautifully. They were getting out in transition repeatedly off of Dallas's turnovers, and we know that they love to push the pace. They were actually hitting threes. The spot-up shooters were stepping up. Guys were relocating. I thought they cut well off of SGA doubles in this game. It was just really nice stuff outside of a couple slumps like the one that you mentioned in the second quarter, but they did a better job of unlocking Chet as a vertical spacer, going over the top to him when the ball handler drew help. J-Dub was able to actually step up as a shot maker in this one. Like, within this game, I don't think there's a lot of blame to go around to Chet and J-Dub. Chet only goes 1 of 7 from 3. I'm talking about offensively. I think that, again, Chet got his ass kicked on the glass. Part of that is just a team construction issue for OKC that we'll talk about. But there are still a couple dudes just down this roster. Lou hits a couple shots early, but it's a pretty rough offensive game from him. Kason Wallace, unfortunately, doesn't have in this game. Jalen Williams, that being Jay Will, leaves a few threes on the board. And I also thought that some of those shots, like Dallas is just happy to live with, right? I don't think they really mind a Jalen Williams three. They certainly don't mind Josh Giddey coming into the game and putting up 2 threes. So this game was absolutely won on the margins, and Dallas was just the slightly better team. And I do like their formula more. For OKC going forward, Logan, how do you approach things this offseason?
It's a good question. The one thing that you mentioned, Carson, Oklahoma City's offense looked a lot better at stretches in this game. I think there's a pretty clear reason why. It's because Josh Giddey wasn't out there. Coming into this game, Isaiah Joe was shooting 41% on catch and shoot threes. He hit some big ones in the first half. Kason Wallace was shooting 40% on catch and shoot threes. Aaron Wiggins was struggling, but just clearly brings more defense and shooting. And then I do want to give props to OKC, and I thought Dagnall should have implemented this earlier in the series. They close with Jay Will as the 4 on the floor, and I just thought that was something that they should have done more often. Just point blank, like, you're so physically outmatched. Like, I thought that was a no-brainer that they should have gone to, and so I want to give them credit for at least making that adjustment. And I do think three-point shooting had a huge part of this closing game. Dallas shoots 11 of 19 in the second half. Oklahoma City shoots 5 of 16. But moving forward, I want to get more big, physical, athletic wings, honestly, similar to the mold of a Derrick Jones Jr. and a PJ Washington. Like, another guy who, outside of Lou Dort, can give you real defensive pop and a little bit of shooting. Those guys are, easier theoretically found than, they're not just growing on trees. You're not just going to find those kind of guys. But you got to get more athletic. You got to get more physical. In the big position, out of all of this, is just another 5 that can hold down non-Chet minutes or give you a little versatility where you can slide Chet Holmgren to the 4 and have him as a help side smaller guy, and a 5 that can just physically match up. Like, I thought that was huge in this fourth quarter too, where you see, like, Kason Wallace is battling for a rebound, and shout out Kason, man. I love the guy. But he's up against Derrick Jones Jr. Like, Kason's not getting around that guy. You just need more size. You need more physicality, more guys that can help Chet out on the interior and on the glass. And it starts with getting a big physical 5. The beauty of that is, while you might not be able to find these big, athletic, defensive wings that can rebound as well, you can find a physical 5 that can give you a different look. And so I don't know if you are searching for that in the draft, if you're looking for one of the young guys, because there are some athletic bigs I like in this one. They're probably not going to be drafting high enough to get an Edey or a Klingon. There's Eve Missy down on the board where, you could explore guys like that. But I would probably look for a veteran big who's, just more physically mature, that's got that old man strength that can really help out Chet on the glass. We can talk about what you do with Josh Giddey, if you shop him, if you try to get value back on him. I don't really
send him to Australia.
Yeah, send him back to Australia. That's not really as big of a key. He's not in my rotation moving forward. Like, I would shop him if you can get good value back for Giddey. But the key position that I'm honing in if I'm Oklahoma City is another big physical, probably older, stronger 5 that can help Chet out on the glass. It's just the biggest glaring weakness on this Oklahoma City team.
So my favorite path for OKC is a little bit different. Obviously, they need to address their physicality and their size on the inside and their ability to rebound, because, like, that's where you lose this series in the fourth quarter. You can talk about having this basketball utopia where everybody can handle and shoot and play make. It's awesome. It got you really far, and you're really young, and you're just going to get better. But the playoffs are extremely physical, and the best teams in the West are very big. Minnesota and Denver are a good bit bigger than Dallas even, and it will hurt you if you are outmatched so convincingly in those categories. And this was a bottom 3 rebounding team in the league this year, so there's no surprise that they struggled like that on this stage. We've talked about the potential avenues that they could take to get a grown man five, a physical five, if it's just trading one of their depth wings for Brook Lopez, just to have that look. He wouldn't even have to start, but you could play him 18, 20 minutes a night. We talked about a potential Jared Allen trade just the other day. There's been the Claxton rumors that we've seen over the past few months. My favorite outcome, though, is still something that we discussed this regular season, which is send Utah everything that they can dream of for Lauri Markkanen. Unfortunately, Josh Giddey now has no value as an asset. I don't think you kind of let the ship sail on that one. To me, he's a bench point guard at this stage. He was the most predictable playoff problem of all time. You literally saw it in the regular season matchup between these two teams, and he was really unplayable throughout this series. But you have so many picks, it's obscene. Lauri Markkanen is on a very, very movable contract, one of the best value contracts. He is still reasonably within your timeline, like he's in his mid-20s. This isn't some old star, and I think he is an ideal fit. I think that you would maintain all of your offensive principles. You're still playing five out. You have this extremely skilled off-ball player, which is another beautiful part of it, because we know SGA in particular is this isolation, pick and roll heavy on ball guard. Everybody around him can play without the ball, but just to have a guy with Lauri's size who can shoot like that, who can also attack mismatches selectively. Defensively, he's not the best, but he can hang capably in space. I wouldn't consider him a minus defender, and he can hold down the glass to me as like your best rebounder. I think that he would be a better rebounder than Chet, and ultimately it would just be a big upgrade from these small ball lineups that we're seeing in that category. And you're adding a top 30 player in basketball. So they're in a position where it's like, you don't have to rush your timeline because you're so young, but why wouldn't you? You have 8,000 picks over the next decade. Like Sam Presti has built a comical stockpile, bro. He's Scrooge McDuck sitting on all these draft picks. Like, move them for an immediate great player who is a great fit. That is the ideal outcome to me. And I don't think it's unreasonable that they could do that. If Utah is willing to move Markkanen at all, which I go back and forth on, but like they're far away enough that I think you should be open to the offer you can't refuse. And OKC is the team that can make that.
Definitely. I mean, and if it's 3 or 4 first round picks, I think it's worth it. And, traditionally, when you're moving off of these star players, the one issue that you can run into is, one, giving up too much value, where I think Oklahoma City has such a surplus of first round picks. It's like, okay, we can afford to just throw some away in a deal. So I don't think you would be giving up too much value. Two, the issue that you run into is when you go all in on a superstar that is either aging or is making way too much money. That's not an issue at all with Markkanen. Like, he's young, he's in the prime of his career. Two, he is on maybe the best value contract in all of basketball. He's not going to screw you up cap-wise and retaining one of these
$18 million next year, bro. And then you'll have to pay him for real, but I would do it.
You're not ruining, your current crop of young players in any way. In three, I can't think of a better fit for this basketball team in terms of what he brings with his skill set. Size, rebounding, and floor spacing. I mean, and he's elite in terms of floor spacing. Like, you talk about, he doesn't need the ball. He's the best off-ball superstar in the league, man. He would fit perfectly alongside SGA. Like, well, yeah, true. But I'm talking about guys who don't really,
also, I love Lauri. Superstar's a bit generous, but he's one of the best off-ball stars in the league.
I'm saying is like guys who aren't primary ball handlers. Guys
he is the most purely off-ball star in the league.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
When you already have super skilled ball handlers.
And I really can't think of another player that would be attainable, right? Utah has a real incentive to dump Lauri because you're not contending anytime soon. You've got young assets that I really like. Like, I love Walker Kessler. I'm a big Keontae George guy. I think they've got, young pieces, but they're not like 2 or 3 moves away where this is going to be a playoff team out west. I think there's a huge incentive for them to get more picks for the future, to, get off of this timeline. And I think there's an incentive for Lauri to go play winning basketball somewhere for a team that really needs him. I think it's a great outcome for both teams. And if Oklahoma City should get it done, I think they should pull the trigger, man. That's a dream scenario.
Agreed. So when we reflect on the end of this season for the Thunder, as we are dishing out a bit of blame pie, if you would, To me, the most goes on J-Dub just because I think so highly of him. And there was a clear burden on him to step up as that second creator, and he didn't do it. I don't put that much on Chet. He really just had a cold 3-point shooting series. He bears some. He wasn't as good offensively, but in this game, he got killed on the glass. The pure rim protection, though, was just out of this world, dude. Like, I think he held opposing players 17% or something below their average when he was the primary defender at the rim throughout these playoffs. And you mentioned just how much Dallas struggled finishing in the restricted area. Chet deserves the overwhelming amount of credit for that. I think the collective spot up shooting is just a big factor. Like, ultimately, OKC got way outshot from beyond the arc. And I do think you have to look at Mark Daigneault some, because I think there were several decisions that he made in this series that ultimately didn't pay off. And I don't even think the process was awful with all of them, but the results were not good. The one that is rough is you end this series just wasting a challenge. That was a pretty clear foul on SGA, dude. I get that it sort of looks like he was able to avoid the body contact at first look, but he just so clearly comes down and makes a bunch of contact with the wrist. And so then you don't have a timeout, and then it's game over. You miss the free throw. Lively, it didn't work out. Josh Giddey starting for the first 4 games of this series, ridiculous. He was consistently awful. And then even just the attention that they dedicated, the overwhelming attention that they dedicated to Luka and Kyrie and their willingness to help so aggressively on rolls and on drives and leave the corner shooters. Like, I thought at the start of the series, that's a good strategy. I was in favor of that. So I don't really blame Daigneault for that. But at the same time, it's like Dallas shoots 40% from 3 in this series. And it's PJ Washington in most of these games. It's Derrick Jones Jr. in this one. Like, they ended up getting beaten more by those guys, certainly compared to expectations, than they did by Kyrie and Luka. So I think the guy's a really good coach. He was obviously coach of the year, but I do think that he ultimately made a few costly decisions in this series.
I think the biggest one probably is the play at the end with PJ. Like, you just have to have the wherewithal to know that you need the timeout, right? It allowed Dallas to just intentionally miss that free throw. You take the ball out of your player's hands. Like, you just can't do that in that scenario. And it's tough, right? Because he's hoping they review it. It's a sad way to go out. The biggest indictment to me on Daigneault is the fact that he played Josh Giddey for so long, man. I'm trying to get the full scope of what his plus minus was in this series. Actually, not as bad as I thought.
It's not as bad as it feels, but let me tell you something. His impact was quite negative.
Yeah, he's man, what would you?
6 points per game on 48% true shooting is what he did in this series.
What would you give up?
That's getting left wide open.
What would you give up for Josh Giddey?
Nothing. I don't want Josh Giddey on my team personally at all.
I understand.
Yeah. So you're definitely not getting anything of value, dude. Again, it's just any sort of vision of him being like a legitimate building block for you is now gone. But OKC is in an amazing place. And ultimately, I do think their core 3 guys all have such outstanding futures in this league. SGA is there. I still think Chet is a top 10 dude down the line. I think J-Dub has an all NBA ceiling in there. And again, even the depth wings like Aaron Wiggins, these dudes, Cason Wallace, I love. Like, it is ultimately just going to be about them adding some more physical maturity. And this experience is good for them because there were a couple instances in the series where they felt like a young basketball team. They felt like an inexperienced basketball team. That's okay. No matter how good you are in the regular season, you're not going to win the title the first time that you get there. You're just not, unless you're the 1977 Blazers. And when the example is one from 50 years ago, that kind of tells you all you need to know. Any final thoughts on this series, Logan, before we take a quick break and then talk a little bit of Knicks Pacers?
Now let's get the people some words from DraftKings.
Fantastic. Oh, I love that segue. All right, guys, we are going to take a quick break, and then we will be talking about Knicks Pacers after some quick words from DraftKings. The 82-game preseason is in the books, and it's finally time for the real season. Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournament through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code NERDS only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Last thing real quick on that series. If you were Dallas, who would you be rooting for in Game 7 of Timberwolves Nuggets? Who would you want to face?
Ooh. Probably Minnesota. I think Jokic probably tears through Gafford and Lively like tissue paper.
I agree. I also think that Denver is the better team. And I think the hope with Minnesota is that you are able to force the ball out of Ant's hands enough, and you're able to get that offense to stagnate some. But anybody playing Minnesota just sucks. And they would obviously make life hell on Luka and Kyrie. They would make those dudes work, and they would take away the rim even more than OKC did in this series. That would be a super uncomfortable matchup, but I think their firepower advantage there would make it more favorable for them.
I don't want to put you too much on the spot right now, but out of the 3 teams remaining in the West, would you take all of them to beat Boston in the finals?
No, I don't think so.
I
would take Denver, definitely. And I would maybe take Minnesota. I think that they are on the same level. I do still think that the 2 best teams in the West are in that series, and we are going to see Game 7. That'll be a lot of fun. But for now, Logan, let's talk about the other series that is a Game 7 incoming, Knicks Pacers. We didn't do a show yesterday, so what were some of your big takeaways from Indiana coming back, taking Game 6 on their home court?
There's a lot of encouraging stuff that we talked about. The biggest one to me, the X factor, so to speak, was Pascal Siakam. He notches 25 points, 14 of them come in the paint. And throughout this series, we had discussed the New York Knicks are down so many players, and not just down so many players, but so many big physical players that match up and can help take away from Pascal Siakam. What does this force New York to do? Well, Thibodeau has been forced to play more Deuce McBride lineups, more 4 guards and a big looks. And finally, we see Siakam take advantage of them. I thought his mismatch attacking was great consistently. When Josh Hart was on him, taking him to the hole. When Deuce McBride was on him, taking him to the hole. And even, once it makes everything go together, once he started taking care of these mismatches, he would get a double here and there. And, it allowed him to set up some easy plays, a dunk for Miles Turner in the game. Like, Siakam finally played how we needed him to. And I also thought they played really good defense on Jalen Brunson. Aaron Nesmith was phenomenal as always. Better defense from Tyrese Haliburton. That was some really big ones. And then my big question, Carson, and I don't know if this changes my gauge on my pick, because beating the New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden in a Game 7 sounds damn near impossible. Like, I know they're down so many players. The pendulum swings a little bit without Josh Hart. And my question is, can the Knicks survive without Josh Hart? Like, he suffers an abdominal injury in this one. You're down Julius Randle. You're down Mitchell Robinson. You're down Bojan Bogdanovic. And now they've been down OG Anunoby. There's reports that potentially OG may be rushed back for this game. Carson, I want to give you some Josh Hart quick facts here. He's played every minute for 4 of New York's 11 games. He's averaging 42.6 minutes per game. He's the first player since Kevin Durant in 2014, 10 years ago, to average as many or more minutes per game. And in these playoffs, he's averaging the 3rd most offensive rebounds, total offensive rebounds, That's behind Jokic and Hartenstein. Real quick trivia time sidebar, Carson. I want to show the people live. He's one of 2 players, 6'4" or shorter in NBA history, to average 2.8 offensive rebounds per game or more across multiple playoff rounds. Do you know who the other one is?
That's really interesting. So my first thought was we would go to like a great throwback rebounder, like a Paul Arizin or maybe a Big O, but they didn't have offensive rebounds. So Russ is not a great offensive rebounder. It's not Jason Kidd, is it? Well, he's probably listed at 6'5". I don't know.
It's not Jason Kidd. This guy's more of a throwback, Carson, a little bit of a do-it-all guy. He's got some hardware for a small guard. Something rare, something that you don't see traditionally won by small guards or guards in general.
It's not Sidney Moncrief, is it?
Sidney Moncrief, Carson.
Wow.
The only other guy. 6'4" or shorter, to have like Josh Hart's impact has been huge. And I just wonder, is that finally going to be the dagger, man? My head has been spinning on this series. I do not understand this series at all. I hate predicting one game formats. The Knicks and Pacers befuddle me, but the New York Knicks offensive rebound percentage in wins is 11% higher than their losses, 41.6% in wins, 30.6% in losses. Josh Hart has been crucial.
6%.
Dude, isn't that crazy? Even in losses, man, that's ridiculous.
But 42% of your own misses, dude.
Yeah. And Josh Hart has been crucial in that. Their offensive rating also takes a different hit. There's a lot of factors that come into it, but Josh Hart's injury is probably the biggest storyline, man. Like, I thought the Pacers played a much better basketball game in terms of their execution, but I really wonder if the Josh Hart injury swings the pendulum, man. It's another huge loss potentially for a team that is already down so many impact basketball players.
If Hart can't play, I don't know how I could in good conscience pick the Knicks to win.
Are you going to pick against the Knicks and MSG?
4 good basketball players. No. Don't put words in my mouth, because you know what I think, Logan? I think Josh Hart does play, because I think he's a warrior. And the fact that they're even saying that OG could play, if Josh Hart is on the floor, I would pick the Knicks. If OG is on the floor, I would confidently pick the Knicks. But yeah, it would be ridiculous just how many quality dudes they would be down without Hart. And Indiana played a really good basketball game in Game 6. I expected them to take care of their home court. They've done it every single game in this postseason. They haven't lost at home. And that offense was just excellent, dude. And they're the number one playoff offense, as they were the number 2 regular season offense, but they were number 1 for quite some time. They also have a 68% assist rate in these playoffs, which is number 1. And you saw that on display again in this one. Phenomenal ball movement. They pushed, as they love to do, plus 11 in transition versus the Knicks in that game. And it wasn't so much about them knocking down a bunch of open threes, although they have done that consistently throughout these playoffs. To me, they put the defense in rotation, made the extra pass, created an advantage, and then there was a lot of great closeout attacking from Miles Turner, from Obi Toppin, from Andrew Nembhard, like all these dudes getting inside the arc and getting good looks in the paint. They had 62 points in the paint, so they were plus 24 there. And it was one of those games where everybody stepped up offensively. Just so many strong contributors. Siakam was excellent. As you mentioned, the star of the day, just bullying mismatches like that was phenomenal. He was going at Josh Hart, and that's what he has to do to try to make those small ball looks much less viable. The mid-range was going. The two-man game was going with him as a roller for either TJ McConnell or Haliburton. Really, really great game from Siakam, who has been pretty underwhelming throughout this series and really throughout the playoffs after that incredible start against Milwaukee in games 1 and 2. And I mentioned how many strong performers there were for Indiana up and down the roster offensively, but TJ McConnell is the one who just stands out again. I tweeted this today, dude. Per 36, not my favorite stat, because if a guy isn't playing 36 minutes a game, or if he isn't playing anything close to it, there's normally a reason for that, right? It's because he's not that good. However, TJ McConnell is quite good, and he's playing behind a great point guard. Regardless, it's not the best stat, but like he's averaging more than 20 and 10 per 36. He did that in the regular season, and he's doing that in the playoffs. Yes, Indiana plays at a crazy pace, but like the dude is just a playmaker. He's so quick, so persistent as a driver. He's so great in transition as a playmaker. There was one possession in this game where they just didn't stop the ball. He got all the way downhill and created a wide open catch and shoot 3. In the mid-range game, we know can be lethal. Like, shout out to that dude. That's the thing. Indiana just has way more weapons, as we know. And they dominated the glass in this game. They were plus 12 there. In New York, as much as they are at a size disadvantage, they just can't afford that. They have to be the team that is to every 50-50 ball. They have to be the team that is at least going even on the glass and ideally winning on the offensive glass, because that is their identity. So when I think about the Knicks formula in Game 7, what they need to go right, they need to keep getting Deuce McBride involved, because he has been so good as a starter. And even though, as we mentioned, like Siakam was bullying them for going small, I think you live with that. I think you live with all of the advantages that you have with Deuce McBride on the floor, because you play faster. You have way more shot making. He has 37 points in these 2 games as a starter. You unlock all of the guard on guard screens that he has with Jalen Brunson that have been super difficult to guard. And he's just clearly one of their 3 best shooters. Like, I just want that dude on the floor. And you need superhuman Jalen Brunson. And he had a rough game, which is hilarious because he still ended up with 31, but like in the first half, it was really, really rough. I didn't hate the shots that he was getting, though. Like, we know Neesmith has done a much better job on him than Nembhard, but he was just missing some of those comfortable looks from mid-range where his bread tends to be buttered. And early, I thought even got a couple of great looks, attacking in semi-transition, getting downhill off of really high pick and roll. So I want to see them get some handoffs going for him where he can get a running start. I want to see some of that high pick and roll. And ultimately, I think you trust him to pull through as the best player on the floor, because even though there's been a little volatility in this series and in this playoff run, there's been a lot more great than there has been shaky. There's been a lot more of the 40 pieces than there has been the inefficient shooting nights. And I would ultimately bet on that. And then if they dominate the effort categories, like, I still lean the Knicks. Also, Madison Square Garden is just a massive advantage, but Hart's absence would be massive because then you need Alec Burks to just be playoff Alec Burks times 20.
I mean, I wonder if you hit the nail on the head right there. Like, Josh Hart.
I probably did.
It has been the how humble. That was funny, man. This guy. Josh Hart has been, you know, the guy who has dominated the effort category. He has been, again, I hate saying this because it's so cliche, the heart and soul of the team. Yeah. It's like, can you win the effort category without Josh Hart? I mean, he is captain hustle. Like, I don't know. I really think they need him out there. Another weird number, Carson, that sticks out to me in the difference between New York wins and losses. This is courtesy of NBA analyst John Schumann on NBA.com. He does great work. They have an offensive rating of 131 in their wins. They have an offensive rating of 107.6 in their losses. Like, they have just ground to a standstill. And they've consistently dominated in their wins, man. In the first half of Game 6, you know, Brunson's 2 of 13 from the field, 1 of 4 from the line. He turns it around, gets a 30-piece, is a much better second half, keeps this thing close. But, yeah, New York needs superhuman Jalen Brunson, and they need to dominate in the effort category. And I just think, I don't know, man. I would never bet against New York at home. I don't think I can pick it. I think that MSG is too big of an advantage to bet against, man. I think that place is going to be rocking, and I think it could swing the tide. But I don't know, man. I keep waiting for the Knicks' luck to run out, and I don't think it is, man.
You make your own luck, Logan. You make your own luck by fighting for every offensive board. Derek Lively showed us that tonight.
I love that. Can we put that on a shirt?
No.
I love that, man. That was inspirational, dude. That got me a little fired up.
Thanks, man. Shout out to Tony Brothers, because that man was putting on a show today. And ever since I saw that video of Teague telling the story about him, have you seen that? Where Teague's mom and aunt were at the game and Tony Brothers pulls him aside and says, "Who are those hoes?" I can't look at him the same, dude. I feel like you have this image of these refs as being professionals, even though we know Tim Donaghy's out there, or he was out there, right? Scumbag. But that was just very jarring to me. And now every time I see him, I just wonder, what is he saying out there on the court?
I kind of gained a little respect for Tony Brothers, man. That's pretty good. He's a real guy. He's a real guy too, man. He's real. Tony Brothers.
It didn't play well with the audience. Big miss by Tony Brothers. Big miss by you as well. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, Logan?
Naz Reid
plays basketball tomorrow, folks, as do the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers. So it seems like we're both riding with the Knicks in that Game 7, at least presuming that Josh Hart plays. And I do think the Nuggets are going to win. I think that they are going to button things up offensively. And the ceiling that they've shown throughout this series has been pretty remarkable. They need some of their supporting cast members, such as Jamal and MPJ, to not shit themselves like they did last game. And Minnesota is going to bring the physicality, and they are going to bring a top-notch effort. And they just played an awesome basketball game. But I do think Denver on their home floor probably takes care of business there. But you know what, Logan? Naz Reid is going to do everything that he can to keep that from happening. So we will be back tomorrow after those games talking some basketball. And then, of course, then we're into conference finals preview season, baby. So we gave a little bit of thought on the Mavs matchups today, but of course we will go much more in depth with that once we know what we are going to see for sure. If you want more Nerd Sesh content, then all of our full shows are here on our YouTube page. You can also Check out some of the in-depth video essays that we do, film breakdowns on the channel. You can listen to the show across audio platforms. You can follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh. And if you want, you can check out our merch. That is at thevolume.com. You can also join our Discord for a chance to speak with the one and only Matthew Spawnhour, who is in there and is very, very, very active. So, that's basically everywhere you can find us. And with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.